And the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
The sisters of Lazarus sent word to Jesus, saying, "Master, the one you love is ill." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise." Martha said, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." Jesus became perturbed and deeply troubled and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
"Behold, my people, I will raise you from your graves." That's what we heard Ezekiel say, or as he prophesied, Ezekiel said to the people, that was the word that the Lord had given him. To really get a fuller picture, of what this first reading is about, because the first reading and second reading are so similar. We need to go back, and this reading is taken from the 37th chapter of Ezekiel, so if you want to read that when you get home, I think it'd be all right. But in that 37th chapter is when we find out that at that time the Israelites had been in bondage. They had been the captives in Babylonia. And they had been there for almost 70 years in captivity. By the time they got to this point, they were beginning to lose faith. They were beginning to lose hope. They were beginning to despair. They thought their God had forgotten them. They thought that their God had abandoned them. And Ezekiel has this vision, and he's standing in a valley full of dried up bones, bleached white from the sun. And in this vision, God tells him, I'm going to put flesh back on these bones, and I'm going to put sinews on these bones, and they will rise up from their graves, and they will be a great people again. So when Ezekiel told this to the Israelites, this gave them hope again. So when we come to the gospel, Lazarus is dying. His sisters, Mary and Martha, they're hurting, They're grieving. So they ask for their relative, Jesus, to come and save Lazarus. But Jesus doesn't get there in time, at least not in their time. And Lazarus dies. This was the first time in my life, and I've lived about as long as the Israelites were in captivity in Babylonia. It was the first time I had ever heard Martha and Mary say what they said in a different tone of voice. They were deeply hurt. Why didn't Jesus come and rescue them so that their brother wouldn't die? I think maybe we've had some similar experiences in our lives. I know I have, where I felt like God just wasn't there. I felt like God had abandoned me, like God had forgotten about me. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience, but I think you might be able to relate to it. So when Jesus did get there, he wept. He was hurting too. So when he gets to the tomb, what does he say? Roll back the stone. And Martha says, it's going to stink. Jesus says, do you believe? I'd ask myself, do I believe? And I ask you, do you believe? Maybe you've been in that valley of dry bones. Maybe you've been in that tomb like Lazarus was. Maybe we've had things happen in our lives where we just thought, where is this God? This God that is supposed to save. This God that loves me. Where is he? To you, I want to say the same thing that Jesus said to Lazarus. Come out. God wants to heal you. God wants to make you whole. That's what he created us to be. And that's the vision that Ezekiel saw as well. Lent is a time to be healed. It is a time to be refreshed. It is a time, if necessary, to be forgiven. Whatever your dry bones may be, and my dry bones as well. I'm not putting myself off to the side here. I've got my dry bones too. Whatever they may be, God wants to put new flesh on those for you. Okay? That's the vision he has for us. We have 2 weeks of Lent left. Let's use those, or allow God to use those, to put new flesh on us. And if there's anything that you need to talk to someone about, you can call Father Chris. I didn't tell him this beforehand. You can call Deacon Ken. You can call Deacon Dan. You can call myself. I'm the new deacon here. My phone number is in the bulletin now. So if you just want to talk, let us know. We'll be more than willing to walk through that valley with you. So that on Easter Sunday, you will be able to rise with Jesus and celebrate that new life.